Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Inna alhamdulillahi nahmaduhu wa nasta'inuhu wa nastaghfiruh wa na'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa sayyiati a'malina man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lah wa man yudlil fala hadiya lah wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. So we finished the chapter about the sleeping of the Prophet ﷺ, how he slept, what he said before he went to bed, what he said when he woke up ﷺ, and we discussed some of the wisdom in it and the reminders that these adhkar and that dua brings to the mind and heart of a Muslim before you go to bed and when you wake up, and what the things that these that dua brings, the images and the emotions that it can bring to the heart of a Muslim. Then, bi'idhnillah, we now move to a new chapter about the worship of the Prophet ﷺ, a description of his worship, how he used to worship. We begin with his worship at night, and then we discover some themes about his worship ﷺ that, alhamdulillah, we can import into our lives and understand from it the balance in worship. Meaning, on the one hand, how to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with dedication, but also on the other hand, how to do it with good balance, inshaAllah. So the first hadith, this is a hadith that we often quote in khutbahs and we often hear in study circles, is that the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would sometimes pray حَتَّى تَنْتَفِخَ قَدَمَاهُ, until his legs, his feet would swell. So they asked him sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, أَتَتَكَلَّفُ هَذَا وَقَدْ غَفَرَ اللَّهُ لَكَ مَا تَقَدَّمَ مِنْ ذَنْبِكَ وَمَا تَأَخَّرَ. أَتَتَكَلَّفُ هَذا, this is a kulfa. Do you bear this? Do you put this so much on yourself? While Allah Azza wa Jal had forgiven you your past and future sins. And think, to yourself, if you find someone who's older than you, and they're worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so much to the extent that their legs and feet start swelling. Blood collects in them. So then you ask them, why are you doing so much? And the Prophet ﷺ replied that despite Allah's forgiveness for the past, present and future of all of the things that he did ﷺ, he said, أَفَلَا أَكُونُ عَبْدًا شَكُورًا, shall I not be a thankful slave of Allah Azza wa Jal? So the Sahaba asked the Prophet ﷺ about one motivation, and he answered about another type of motivation. That you can worship Allah Azza wa Jal with one motivation of forgiving your sins. Someone who has done a lot of bad things, and all of us have done a lot of bad things. So you stand up at night, or you engage in any type of ibadah, hoping from Allah Azza wa Jal that ibadah will erase all the previous sins. So that is a motivation that we have. I am sinful, a sinful slave of Allah Azza wa Jal. How am I going to have all these sins gone and forgiven? Ibadah. So I engage in ibadah, and in my mind or between my eyes are all of my sins that I'm hoping are going to be erased. So if I extend my ibadah, lengthen it, and even take on sometimes a little bit more, I'm doing this with my sins in mind. So that is one motivation. But then for the Prophet ﷺ, if Allah had told him, well, all of it is gone, all of your sins are gone, nothing to worry about, what is the remaining motivation? The remaining motivation is that Allah had given me so much, including forgiving all of my sins. Shall I not then stand in worship and praise Him subhanahu wa ta'ala for this ni'mah and other types of ni'mah? So shukr is also another motivation that we can have. So sometimes you pray, you fast, you give sadaqah because you're afraid of your sins, right? And other times you can do these things because you want to thank Allah Azza wa Jal. Sometimes you do it out of fear, sometimes you do it out of hope, sometimes you do it out of love. And you can move between these motivations. All of these are legitimate motivations. Worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal out of love, and then at times worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal out of hope, meaning hoping that He will give you what you need. And then worshipping Allah Azza wa Jal, what's the third one? Out of fear. Now we said shukr in Allah Azza wa Jal, definitely, right? So out of hope or shukr, and then out of fear also, that I'm afraid and I'm hopeful, thankful, and also I am doing this because of loving Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the equivalent, wallahu a'lam, of being a thankful servant. So, of course, one thing to take from this hadith also, which is going to be another hadith that we will encounter. When you hear this hadith, it does not mean overburden yourself. It does not mean overburden yourself. But you have to take or adopt of deeds that which is not going to be inconsistent. That which is not going to cause burden and distress for you physically and emotionally. Whatever you can take on and be continuous with it, that's your ibadah. And you can gradually increase it. But no one who hears this from the Prophet ﷺ should try and to immediately go and attempt something like that and achieve the same result and then not be able to stand in ibadah for a week. Or rather, feel so fed up with ibadah, so bored with it, then for the rest of the month he does not worship Allah Azza wa Jal because he's done something that was really beyond his ability, beyond his capacity. So the Prophet ﷺ says in another hadith that we will encounter inshallah either tonight or next week, عَلَيْكُمْ مِنَ الْأَعْمَالِ مَا تُطِيقُونَ. Adopt of deeds what you can tolerate. Don't go beyond it. And that's hikmah. So this thing the Prophet ﷺ could do it day after day, right? Or every couple of days or every 3 days, but he can be consistent with it sallallahu alaihi wasallam without feeling that he's pressured, without feeling any kind of tightness or compulsion. No, this is something that is coming out of him sallallahu alaihi wasallam willingly. And if ibadah is like that, that's the ibadah that Allah Azza wa Jal loves. Aisha radiallahu anha was asked, now we're going to go into Salatul Layl, night prayer. Aisha radiallahu anha was asked about the salah of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. How did he pray at night? So she said, كَانَ يَنَامُ أَوَّلَ اللَّيْلِ ثُمَّ يَقُومُ. He used to sleep the beginning of the night and then he would rise to pray. فَإِذَا كَانَ مِنَ السَّحَرِ. When it is time for sahar. Sahar is that last part of the night. The last third of the night. أَوْتَرَ ثُمَّ أَتَى فِرَاشًا. He will pray with it and then he'll go to his bed. فَإِنْ كَانَ لَهُ حَاجَةٌ أَلَمَّ بِأَهْلِهِ. If he wanted to be intimate with his family, he would be. وَإِلَّا, or else he would go to bed. فَإِذَا سَمِعَ الْأَذَانَ وَثَبْ. Then when he hears the adhan, he would jump. Meaning what? وَثَبْ. He would rush to the salah. This is what it means. He would rush to the salah with energy. وَثَبْ. فَإِنْ كَانَ جُنُبًا أَفَاضَ عَلَيْهِ الْمَاءِ. If he had a major ritual impurity, he would bathe. وَإِلَّا تَوَضَّأَ وَخَرَجَ إِلَى الصَّلَاةِ. But if not, he would make wudu and he would come out for salah. So this gives you a glimpse of it. We'll get more of it inshallah with the coming ahadith. But how does she describe his salah? Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He would sleep in the beginning of the night and then wake up for salah. Then when it comes the time of sahar, that is the time of his witr, and then he goes back to bed. Either to be intimate with his family and sleep, or if not, just sleep. Then when he hears the adhan, then he rushes to the salah, makes wudu or bathes, and then comes out for salat al-fajr. Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, he says that he spent the night in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam with his aunt Maymuna. So he describes what happened, because he wanted to find out how the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam prayed at night. This is not something that was open to everybody, so he wanted to find out personally, how did he pray at night? So this is his encounter. This is what happened to him. So he's in the home, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and his wife Maymuna, who happens to be Ibn Abbas's aunt. فَضَّجَعْتُ فِي عَرْضِ الْوِسَادَةِ وَضَّجَعَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ فِي طُولِهَا. So he says, I put my head on the width or on the side of the pillow, and the Prophet ﷺ on the length of the pillow. So the Prophet and his wife ﷺ had covered the length of the pillow, and he, Ibn Abbas, on the side. So all of them were sharing that pillow. قال حتى إذا انتصف الليل أو قبله بقليل أو بعده بقليل. He says then, when it was the middle of the night, or a little bit before or a little bit after, they didn't have, right, watches, so he estimated. The middle of the night, a little bit before, a little bit after. قال استيقظ رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. He woke up. فجعل يمسح النوم عن وجهه. Then he wiped away sleep from his face. Meaning like he rubbed his face صلى الله عليه وسلم. وقرأ العشر الآيات الخواتيم من سورة آل عمران. And then he read the last 10 ayahs, the conclusion of Surah Al Imran. إن في خلق السماوات والأرض واختلاف الليل والنهار لآيات لأولي الألباب الذين يذكرون الله قياما وقعودا وعلى جنوبهم إلى آخر السورة. So he read all of this. And these are ayahs of contemplation. Ayah of remembrance of Allah Azza wa Jal and ayahs of contemplation. ثم قام إلى شن معلق فتوضأ منها فأحسن الوضوء. So after he read these ayahs, then he goes to a water skin, a water container that was hanging from the ceiling, and he made wudu from it, and he says فأحسن الوضوء. He completed, perfected his wudu. He did it well. ثم قام يصلي. Then he stood up to pray. قال عبد الله فقمت إلى جنبه فوضع رسول الله يده اليمنى على رأسي ثم أخذ بإذن اليمنى ففتلها فصلى ركعتين. He said, then I stood up and next to the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Right? And it doesn't say it here, but in another hadith, he stood to the left of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So the Prophet, exactly. So the Prophet held him by the ear and moved him to the right. He أخذ بإذني ففتلها. Now if you read it literally, you will read it as he took my ear and he twisted it. Right? He twisted it. But it doesn't really mean twisted it. You know, in some cultures, right? If you want to punish someone, you take him and you twist him by the ear. It doesn't mean that he took it and he twisted it. He said no. In another narration, Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu says, قال فعل ذلك ليؤنسني في ظلمة الليل. He did that. He, held my ear so that he would comfort me in the darkness of the night, because it was completely pitch dark, completely dark. So it was just a gesture from the Prophet sallallahu, not a twist, a gesture, but that he held his ear sallallahu alayhi wasallam. فوضع يده اليمنى على رأسي ثم أخذ بيدي فصلى ركعتين. So he says فصلى ركعتين. Then he prayed 2 rak'ahs. ثم ركعتين. Then 2 rak'ahs. ثم ركعتين. Then 2 rak'ahs. ثم ركعتين. Then 2 rak'ahs. ثم ركعتين. That makes them 10. ثم ركعتين. That makes them 12. ثم أوتر. Then he prayed witr. So he counted Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu 2, then 2, then 2, then 2, then 2. Right? And then 2. So he counted 12 sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So again, 2 rak'ahs, 2 rak'ahs, 2 rak'ahs, 2 rak'ahs, 2 rak'ahs, 2 rak'ahs. These are 6. 6 by 2 is 12. Then he prayed witr sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So that makes them 13. And we'll find out inshallah what that means. ثم الضجع. Then he slept or lied down. ثم نام حتى نفخ وكان إذا نام نفخ. And then he slept until he nafakh, until he breathed heavy, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, from his mouth, not snored, breathed heavy. وَكَانَ إِذَا نَامَ نَفَخ. When the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, if he would sleep, you would hear him breathing heavily from his mouth, like something like that, نفخ. حتى جاءه المؤذن فقام فصلى ركعتين خفيفتين. When the mu'adhin came to alert him to the time of salah, he prayed 2 short, light rak'ahs. These are the sunnahs of Fajr. So he prayed them at home, and these are quick, light, short rak'ahs that he prayed. ثُمَّ خَرَجَ فَصَلَّى الصُّبْحِ. Then he left his home and prayed Fajr prayer. So this is the night of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and it is like what Aisha radiallahu anha said. Right? So sleeps the beginning of the night, then he wakes up, and he adds here, radiallahu anhu, that he saw the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. First of all, he wiped the sleep out, away from his face, away from his body. Then read the last ayahs from Surah Al Imran, and that could be a sunnah, by the way. If a person memorizes them or he has them written down, then when you wake up, you read because of the reminders in them. You go and you make wudu, and you make wudu well, and you stand up in salah, and you pray 13, in total 13 or 11 rak'ahs, as we will see, inshallah. And then the sunnah also for sunnatul fajr is for it to be short, not a long sunnah, and then you go out for salah as-subh. قال وفي الرواية الأخرى, in another narration, فأتاه بلال فآذنه بالصلاة. Bilal came to him and informed them about the time of salah. فَقَامَ وَصَلَّى وَلَمْ يَتَوَضَّأ. He stood up and he prayed and he did not make wudu. And that's interesting, because he was sleeping and he woke up and he prayed and he did not make wudu. Do you know why?
Yes.
Yeah?
Because he was sleeping with his hand on his head and not put his head down on the pillow.
Uh-huh.
So it would be like a nap while it was.
Actually, that's a very good guess. That's a very good guess, but it's not the reason. But actually, it's an excellent guess. It means that you were listening last time. But Jazakallah, it's actually a very good guess. But do you know why that if he actually slept, he slept?
Because he was bleeding heavily from the mouth.
Okay. Now, one thing extra.
Hearts never sweat.
Na'am, that's what it is. That the Prophet ﷺ has a distinct feature to him that other people do not have. Because his eyes sleep, but his heart does not sleep. Right? So what does it mean that his heart does not sleep? He's aware. Exactly, he's conscious. He's aware. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So he's aware if his wudu is valid or invalid. Right? So this tells you, Wallahu a'lam, that why is it that we renew our wudu when we sleep? Is because we're not conscious whether we invalidated our wudu or not. The Prophet ﷺ is conscious and he knows whether that happened or not. So that's why he stood up and he prayed without any wudu. Okay? So that's one benefit in it. Yeah.
If you fall asleep sitting without, leaning against the wall, and you wake up, you still have wudu. But if you are against the wall, you fall asleep, and your wudu is void. You have to make fresh wudu.
Now, some of the ulama, and I think that's the accurate opinion, because then you sort of comprehensively deal with all the evidence. They say there is a distinction between when you sleep lying down and sitting up. So if you sleep lying down, it most probably will invalidate your wudu, so you need to go and renew it. But if you're sitting and you sleep, especially if you nod and come back, you're fine, inshallah. Your wudu is still valid. If you're in doubt, renew your wudu. But as far as validity, they say if you're sitting, that still counts as a valid wudu. So, continuing with Aisha radiallahu, Ibn Abbas first, and we go back to Aisha. He says, كان النبي يصلي من الليل 13 ركعة. He used to pray at night 13 rak'ahs. We'll see how. So he used to pray at night 13 rak'ahs. Now Aisha radiallahu anha says that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if he did not pray at night, that something stopped him from praying, like sleeping, or he simply did not wake up, how many rak'ahs would he pray in the morning to compensate for the missing rak'ah at night? 12. 12. And he would pray them between sunrise and dhuhr. So this is what he said, sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that if you had a habit of praying at night, and you miss it for whatever reason, sometimes you're busy, sometimes you're working, sometimes you're sick, and then you want to compensate for those rak'ahs that you missed, you can still do it. After Fajr, after sunrise, you have time till Dhuhr, you can pray these rak'ahs, and it will be counted as if you prayed them from the night. Right? So this is, you can make up that sunnah by doing it in the morning. So it says here that the Prophet ﷺ, and the reason why he would do this, as we will find in a hadith that we will encounter shortly, inshallah, again either this week or the next, is that the Prophet ﷺ was continuous in his deeds. He wouldn't miss it. If he would miss something, he'd always compensate. He'd always compensate. So his actions are always regular. And that helps you stay regular in your deeds. Whenever you miss it, whether it's a fast, or a salah, or a sadaqah, you will always make it up. So you never fall into the habit of missing this day. And that's wisdom in ibadah, by the way. Yeah, you never miss that ibadah, and you'll always keep doing it. So if he would miss that ibadah at night, he would do it in the morning. Now, there is a hadith here where the Prophet ﷺ says, إِذَا قَامَ أَحَدُكُم مِّنَ اللَّيْلِ فَلْيَفْتَتِحْ صَلَاتَهُ بِرَكْعَتَيْنِ خَفِيفَتَيْنِ. When one of you wants to pray at night, let him open up his salah, begin his salah by 2 light short rak'ahs. So this is an etiquette of Salatul Layl, an etiquette of night prayer. So when you're going to rise, inshallah, you're going to begin your salah. How do I begin by salah? Think of it like appetizer. Right? You don't begin with the meat, right? Right? You don't eat that. You get some appetizers. So in the beginning of your salah, you're still waking up from sleep. Maybe you're a little bit tired. don't begin with your longest rak'ahs, that will come after. But 2 short rak'ahs, 2 light rak'ahs. That gets you ready, the engine running, inshallah, so that you can start your salah. So this is the recommendation and the actions of the Prophet ﷺ. Rak'ataini khafifatayn, 2 light rak'ahs. Another Sahabi, see, we're lucky, alhamdulillah, that the Sahaba were so eager and interested in the salah of the Prophet ﷺ that more than one would go and try to notice how he prayed. So we had Ibn Abbas. Now we have another Sahabi, Zayd ibn Khalid. He says, I wanted to observe the salah of the Prophet ﷺ. How did he pray? قال فتوسدت عتبته أو فسطاطه. I slept at his doorstep. On the doorstep of his tent. They said this happened when they were traveling. Because it would be improper for him to sleep at the doorstep, and the wife of the Prophet is inside. So that would be improper. But the fustat means a tent. So he said probably this happened when they were traveling. Meaning that his wife is not there. So how did he proceed? So he says, فَصَلَّى رَكْعَتَيْنِ خَفِيفَتَيْنِ. He began with 2 light rak'ahs. ثم صلى ركعتين طويلتين طويلتين طويلتين. Then he prayed 2 rak'ahs that were long, long, long. This is what he said. Long, long, long. Right? So 2 short, and then you go into the meat. Right? Then long, long, long rak'ahs. ثم صلى ركعتين وهما دون اللتين قبلهما. Then he prayed 2 rak'ahs that were shorter than the first 2. Then he prayed 2 rak'ahs that were shorter than the second 2. Then he prayed 2 rak'ahs that were shorter than the ones before them. Then when he prayed 2 rak'ahs that were shorter than, so it's progressively getting shorter. So the longest one are the 2 wait a second. The first 2 rak'ahs are the shortest.
Yes.
And then the ones that follow are the longest one, and then from that you decline in length. Right? ثم صلى ركعتين, and they are below the ones, or beneath, or shorter than the ones before them. ثم أوتر فذلك 13 ركعة. Then he prayed witr, and those are 13 rak'ahs. So in other ahadith, when it says that the Prophet ﷺ prayed 11, that's the famous hadith, that in Ramadan and outside of Ramadan, he wouldn't pray more than 11 rak'ahs. And here it is said that he prays 13 rak'ah. So where do the extra 2 rak'ahs come from? They say these 2 short light rak'ahs are those extra rak'ahs. So if you count the total number with those short rak'ahs, it will be 13. If you count the number without those short ones, it'd be 11. So that is habit sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So you can either say 13 or you can either say 11, depending on how you count and what you include and what you exclude.
That's a question.
Yeah.
So witr, it's after the last 2, reciting salam, and witr is 1 rak'ah by itself as opposed to 3 together.
Naam. So witr has 2 forms to it, or 2 common forms to it. The one that you've mentioned, that you will pray 2 rak'ahs and you will say your salam and you stand and you come with 1 single rak'ah. So this is 3, 2 plus 1. Or you would pray those 3 continuous, 3 all together, but without sitting for tashahhud in the middle. Right? Without sitting for tashahhud in the middle. I know that in the Hanafi madhab, they sit for tashahhud in the middle. So they have 2 tashahhuds in it. But the accurate opinion is that you pray 3, but without tashahhud in the middle. The tashahhud is only at the end. So that is the strongest sunnah from the Prophet ﷺ. You can pray it either at 3 continuous or 2 and 1, inshallah. Now, Aisha radiallahu anha was asked, how was the Prophet's salah in Ramadan? So she said, ما كان رسول الله ليزيد في رمضان ولا في غيره على 11 ركعة. She said the Prophet ﷺ wouldn't do more in Ramadan or outside of Ramadan more than 11 rak'ahs. So we now understand, how 11 is counted and how 13 are counted. So she's saying that now she's counting without those short ones. So in Ramadan or outside of Ramadan, he doesn't do more than 11 rak'ahs. يصلي 4 لا تسأل عن حسنهن وطولهن. He prays 4, first 4. Don't ask about how beautiful and long they are. ثم يصلي 4 لا تسأل عن حسنهن وطولهن. Then he prays 4. Don't ask about how long and beautiful they are. Then he prays 3 rak'ahs. So Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, O Prophet of Allah, do you sleep before you pray witr? Do you sleep before? So that tells you that the Prophet ﷺ at times would sleep before praying witr. Sometimes he prays witr and sleep. So she asked him when she noticed that sometimes he sleeps before witr salah. So do you do this because it's risky? You can miss it, right? So the Prophet ﷺ said, Ya Aisha, inna aynaya tanaman wa la yanamu qalbi. He says, Aisha, my eyes sleep, but my heart does not sleep. My eye sleeps, but my heart does not sleep. Meaning that I will wake up for Fajr. I will wake up for Fajr. There are some exceptions to it, inshallah, because we know from one incident that the Prophet ﷺ slept and he missed Fajr. And this is something that Allah Azza wa Jal wanted for it to happen so that we will learn something from it. But the norm is that the Prophet ﷺ, as he said, my eyes will sleep but my heart does not sleep. Meaning I can wake up for witr and not miss it by the will of Allah Azza wa Jal. Now,
so this hadith is definitive that he says in Ramadan or outside Ramadan,
no.
pray the 11 rak'ahs.
No.
So where does the 21, 23 that some people pray, where does that come from in Ramadan?
Okay, so the brother Zahir is asking if with the Prophet ﷺ in Ramadan and outside of Ramadan he didn't pray more than 11 or didn't pray more than 13, where does the 21 rak'ahs or more than that come from? It comes later on, after the Prophet ﷺ and after the time of the Sahaba, when people started to notice that we cannot read as much as the Prophet ﷺ reads, all in just 11 or 10 or 13 rak'ahs. That is, for them, standing for so long is a bit tiring. So what they decided to do, right or wrong, what they decided to do, will divide all of that on 20 rak'ahs or on 30 rak'ahs. So they adopted that practice. And it continued from that time till today. Now,
wasn't it Uthman that suggested, because there were people coming in different groups, some were playing 8, some were there was no consistency. So there's some consistency. Uthman said 20 should be the norm.
no, Umar radiallahu anhu collected the people behind one imam. So during the time of Abu Bakr, because the Prophet ﷺ did not legislate Taraweeh in Jama'ah as a continuous practice. He prayed few days and then he stopped because he was afraid ﷺ that this would be an obligation on the Ummah. So from that time and during the time of Abu Bakr and a time during the time of Umar, people would pray in the masjid but in smaller groups. So what Umar did radiallahu anhu is that he would appointed one imam and asked everybody to pray behind that one imam. And he continued the practice of the Prophet ﷺ 11 rak'ahs. He didn't add anything to it. It happened after their time in Mecca, in Medina and other places that they thought that yes, the best practice is praying 11, but they did not think that it was limited to 11. Based on some other evidence, for instance, where the Prophet ﷺ said, Salatul layli wa nahar mathna mathna, that prayer of day and night is 2-2. So they understood from it that there is no limit to it. 11 is best, but you can add more. So they decided, okay, since it may work best for people, especially if we divide the same number of ayahs on more rak'ahs, so people get to relax, we can pray 20, we can pray 30, we can pray 40, whatever we want. But no doubt that the best practice is the practice of the Prophet ﷺ. If he continuously prayed those number of rak'ahs, it is best to adhere to those number of rak'ahs, inshallah. No question. And they pray 20 and then witr afterwards, right? Yeah. That's right. Yeah, in Mecca and Medina. In Mecca and Medina, that's the practice over there. Now, so it says here in the following hadith, and it adds a little bit about what the Prophet used to do. He used to pray at night 11 rak'ahs. يُوتِرُ مِنْهَا بِوَاحِدَةٍ. He prayed witr as one rak'ah, one single rak'ah at the end. فَإِذَا فَرَغَ مِنْهَا الضَّجَعَ عَلَى شِقِّهِ الْأَيْمَنِ. When he's done with that, he would lie on his right side. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So either here it means lies down to sleep, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or to rest. Or some ulamas have said, actually no, this hadith should be in reference to lying down after praying sunnatul fajr. actually after praying Sunnatul Fajr. So one of the sunnahs that are now well known is that the Prophet ﷺ, when he prays Sunnatul Fajr, and he prays it where? At home. So waiting for Fajr, he would relax. And he would relax by lying down on his right side, waiting for Fajr prayer, to gain as much energy as he can, to relax as much as he can for the salah. So that's a sunnah that we can also practice as well. You pray your sunnah at home, let's say, and let's say there is enough time for you to actually lie down a little bit and then get into your car and come to the masjid. You can do that a little bit so that you relax before coming for Salatul Fajr. Now, Aisha, yes, we're still with Aisha radiallahu anha. She said that كان رسول الله يصلي من الليل 9 ركعات. The Prophet ﷺ would pray at night 9 rak'ahs. So that is another way to pray. So 11, let's say, is the maximum, or 13 is the maximum, but you can pray less. And here the Prophet ﷺ prayed how many? 9. So you can pray 2, 2, 2, 2, and then 1 witr. Right? So you can do that, inshallah. Now we'll have Hudayfa ibn al-Yaman radiyallahu anhu, and again another description of the prayer of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and how long it was and how dedicated it was. So he said that he prayed with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam the night prayer, and when the Prophet began his salah, he said, Allahu Akbar, ذُو الْمَلَكُوتِ وَالْجَبَرُوتِ وَالْكِبْرِيَاءِ وَالْعَظَمَةِ. So this is du'a ul-istiftah, the beginning of the salah. So one of the ad'iyah, and there are many ad'iyahs of it, that you begin your salah by saying it. This one is one of them. Allahu Akbar, dhul malakut, Allahu Akbar, the one who has the kingship, the power, mulk, dhul malakuti, wal jabaruti, the overwhelming power. Al jabarut is the overwhelming power. Wal kibriyai, the greatness that no one can reach. Wal azama, it also means greatness. So he is glorifying Allah Azza wa Jal by these attributes, that He is the King, that He is the all-powerful, and He is the all-great beyond any deficiency or shortcoming or equal. Then he says, ثُمَّ قَرَأَ الْبَقَرَةِ. Then he read Al-Baqarah, right? Surah Al-Baqarah. قال ثُمَّ رَكَعَ فَكَانَ رُكُوعُهُ نَحْوَ مِنْ قِيَامِهِ يَقُولُ سُبْحَانَ رَبِّيَ الْعَظِيمِ سُبْحَانَ رَبِّيَ الْعَظِيمِ. Then he went into ruku'. And his ruku' was equal to his recitation, saying Subhana Rabbi al-Azim, Subhana Rabbi al-Azim. ثُمَّ رَفَعَ رَأْسَهُ. Then he raises his head. فَكَانَ قِيَامُهُ نَحْوًا مِنْ رُكُوعِهِ. So when he raised his head and stood up, that standing was equal to the ruku' time. And he would say, لِرَبِّ الْحَمْدِ لِرَبِّ الْحَمْدِ. Praise and thanks to Allah, praise and thanks to Allah. ثُمَّ سَجَدَ. Then he prostrated, and his prostration was as long as his recitation, as long as he was reciting. And he was saying, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la. And then he raised his head and sat between those two prostrations. And that sitting between those two prostrations was close to the time when he was prostrating. And he was saying, Rabbi ighfirli, Rabbi ighfirli. Ya Allah forgive me, Ya Allah forgive me. حتى قرأ, until he read Al-Baqarah and Al-Imran wal-Nisa wal-Ma'idah or Al-An'am. Ma'idah or Al-An'am. But he read all of it. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So he gives you here how at least one night of the nights of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was. That his salah is equal. He reads Al-Baqarah in 1 rak'ah. Reads Al-Baqarah in 1 rak'ah. And then when you go into ruku', you spend your time in ruku'. And of course, again, they don't have watches there to tell you exactly. It was like 50 minutes here, 50 minutes. But he says, as an estimate, it was the time appeared to him close to the time that he spent reading Al-Baqarah. Then when he stood back up, it was close to the time that he spent in ruku'. Then he went to the sujood. It was close to the time that he spent in ruku' and that he spent in recitation. And so on. It's, subhanAllah, there's balance in it. And he's giving himself, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the time to praise Allah and make dua and thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when he's reciting, when he is in his ruku', when he is in his sujood, and in between them. Right? So until he read Al-Baqarah, Al-Imran, Nisa, Al-Ma'idah, and you find here that there is barakah in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Not only that there is fortitude, strength in his body, and resolve in his spirit that he can read all of this and not feel bored and not feel tired. But at the same time, there is barakah in his time. Right? That you can do all of this ibadah, and Allah Azza wa Jal will bless you to be able to do all of it in this night. So this, inshallah, is also one thing that a person can do who worships Allah. Allah can put a lot of barakah in your time. You can do so much in little time. Now, another way that the Prophet ﷺ would spend his night prayer, and here what is beautiful about it, it shows you variety. It shows you variety. قام رسول الله بآية من القرآن ليلة. The Prophet ﷺ recited one ayah for the entire night, meaning his salah. Right? Of course, with sleep and all of it. But in one of those nights, he didn't read Al-Baqarah and Al-Imran. It's just one ayah stopped him, and he kept repeating this ayah his entire salah. Right? His entire salah. And this tells you about, subhanallah, the great connection he had with the Quran. And something, that we can learn. The great connection that we can have to the Quran, that sometimes when an ayah stops you, or a couple of ayahs stop you, it's actually from the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, is to keep repeating them until you get all that you can get from them. Because one ayah, maybe you're going through some trouble, some pain, you need some wisdom, some insight, and you find an ayah, and that ayah really hits your heart. That ayah really is treating an illness that you have. Keep repeating it and keep learning from it until you find yourself really reacting to this ayah. And your eyes are flowing with tears and your heart is trembling. That is medicine to the heart. Better than finishing the entire Surah Al-Baqarah and Al-Imran without being affected by them. If you read little from the Quran but you're reacting to it, it's a lot better than reading so much without paying attention to what you're saying. So here the Prophet ﷺ demonstrates that sometimes part of Qiyam is it's not the quantity but the quality of what you're saying. And it's the reaction to it. And that one ayah, maybe one night is enough. And some other night, Al-Baqarah is enough. So it depends on you and your heart and what you're seeking, what Allah Azza wa Jal gifts you with on that particular night. And of course you've noticed that if a Prophet is going to read Baqarah and Al-Imran and Nisa and all of this, it's going to be long, right? It's going to be long. So Abdullah ibn Mas'ud said, I prayed with the Prophet ﷺ, and he kept standing and reading, kept standing and reading until I intended to do something bad. They said, what did you intend to do? He says, I intended to sit and just let him pray. Like just, okay, continue with your salah, I can't follow anymore. So it tells you that the Prophet ﷺ excelled in his ibadah. And that comes, not because anybody forced him. That's the difference. I mean, I can force my children, go up, stand up and pray. Sit and read the Quran. But that's an external motivation. It's because of my pressure that they're doing this. And if that pressure is removed, what happens? They're not going to do it. But if you create that internal motivation in them, they're going to do this even if someone asks them not to. Even if something is competing with their time, they say, I don't want to do this. I'd rather be reading the Quran or praying or being close to Allah Azza wa Jal. It's because they love it. So the Prophet loved it. That's why it was easy for him to do it. And if you love doing it, it'll be easy for us, bi'idhnillah, to do it. Nobody would have to remind us to do this. And again, variety, inshallah, in salah. Sometimes you're tired, sometimes you're sick, you get older. You'll find that the Prophet ﷺ was not rigid in his ibadah. That's what the beauty of it was, not rigid. So she said, in Annabi kana yusalli jalisa, the Prophet ﷺ would pray sitting down. فَيَقْرَأُ وَهُوَ جَالِسٌ, and he reads while he's sitting down. فإذا بقي من قراءته قدر ما يكون 30 أو 40 آية قام فقرأ وهو قائم ثم ركع وسجد ثم صنع في الركعة الثانية مثل ذلك. So he's reading while he's sitting down. She says then when he has about 30-40 ayahs left, he will stand and read those ayahs while he's standing. Then he goes to ruku' and then goes to sujood. Then when he goes to the next rak'ah, he'll do the same thing. Sit down and read whatever he wants from the Quran. Then when it's about a little bit of the ayahs that are left, he'll stand up. He can stay. Now he can stand up. He'll stand up, finish those ayahs, then he goes into his ruku' and sujood. So sometimes you're tired, sometimes your legs are hurting, sometimes you're getting older. You can't stand up for that long. You can do this. Okay, and the Prophet ﷺ would sit down, or would his prayer would be sitting down more and more as he progressed in age. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now, another way is when she was asked, Aisha radiallahu anha, she said, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he used to pray a lot at night while standing, and also a lot at night while sitting down. So he would do this while he's standing, and he would also pray while sitting down. So if he is reading while he is standing, he would go to ruku' and sujood while he's standing as well. That from that position, right? He's standing while he's reciting. Then he would go to ruku' from that position, and then will go to sujood from that position. But if he is reciting while he is sitting down, he will go to ruku' and sujood from that position. So that is another way of doing it. So you have an option. So I'm sitting in my salah. I'm sitting in my salah and I'm reading the Quran. I have an option. I have energy. I have health. I can then stand up, read some more ayahs, then go to ruku' and sujood while I'm standing. Or I don't have energy, or I am sick, or I'm too old. While I'm sitting, I can go to ruku' and sujood. So I'm reciting while I'm sitting, I'm going to ruku' while I am sitting, and I'm going to prostration while I'm sitting. And all of that is acceptable. Right? Hafsa, the wife of the Prophet ﷺ, she also said that the Prophet would pray while he is sitting. But she says also something interesting about his qira'ah, his recitation. وَيَقْرَأُ بِالسُّورَةِ وَيُرَتِّلُهَا حَتَّى تَكُونَ أَطْوَلَ مِنْ أَطْوَلِ مِنْهَا. He would recite the surah, and it would be long because of his recitation until it is longer than a surah comparable to it. In the length of ayah. It is longer than a surah that is comparable to it, or a surah that is even longer than it. So if you take two surahs, Surah A is long, and Surah B is shorter than Surah A. The Prophet ﷺ would recite Surah B to the extent that it would be longer than Surah A. Right? So meaning what? The Prophet would recite it, and recite it well, and would spend his time with it. And according to another hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he recites, especially at night, if he passes by an ayah of rahmah, an ayah of mercy, what would he do? He would ask Allah for it. Ya Allah, grant us this. Ya Allah, grant me this. And if he would pass by an ayah of punishment, what would he do? Ya Allah, protect me from this. A'udhu billahi min dhalik. As'alullah dhalik. So he's reacting to the ayahs that he is reading. So obviously then the surah becomes long. Right? Because he's reading, he's giving it its time, and he's reacting to it by dua. وَرَتِّلُ الْقُرْآنَ تَرْتِيلًا. Naam, of course, especially at night. Because the heart is really listening to what the tongue is saying. More than the day. The heart is really listening to what the tongue is saying. So you're learning stuff from the Quran. And your heart is reacting to it, is being purified by it. Now, so Aisha radiallahu anha, she says that when the Prophet ﷺ, before his death, most of his salah happened when he was sitting down. Most of his salah took place, كان أكثر صلاته وهو جالس. Why? Because the Prophet ﷺ got older, right, and body weaker. So even if all of us, if we live long enough, we're going to reach that stage. So don't feel bad if that happens. Don't feel bad if that happens, because it happened to your Prophet ﷺ. And he's the best of, the creation of Allah. So if it happens to you, it's going to happen to you. So take advantage of the fact that, it's happening, but still I'm still alive, and Allah has given me the energy to pray. Don't say, I cannot stand anymore and feel bad for it. No. The Prophet ﷺ couldn't stand. Well, you can still sit. You sit and pray. Allah Azza wa Jal will reward you full reward for that, bi'idhnillah. So, inshallah, just a few more ahadith. Maybe we'll just finish this chapter, inshallah. Ibn Umar radiallahu anhu says, now we move now from night prayer into the sunnahs. So he says, I prayed with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yes.
Is there any mention about his wife Aisha saying the scissors is so long that she couldn't cope with this scissors, but she was putting behind it?
Not here. Not here. I'll look for it, inshallah. Ibn Umar, he says, I prayed with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam 2 rak'ahs before Dhuhr, and 2 rak'ahs after, and 2 rak'ahs after Maghrib in his home, and 2 rak'ahs after Isha in his home. Right? So what is he telling us here? What is he teaching us? The sunnahs. The sunnah. So this is what he observed. He says 2 rak'ahs before Dhuhr, 2 rak'ahs after Dhuhr, 2 rak'ahs after Maghrib in his home, and 2 rak'ahs after Isha in his home. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Right? And Hafsa says that the Prophet ﷺ would pray 2 rak'ahs when dawn, when it's dawn. And he hears the adhan. And these rak'ahs are the rak'ahs of what? Sunnah. Exactly, the sunnah of Sunnah al-Fajr. So this is an additional sunnah that Hafsa radiyallahu anha reports. And she tells Ibn Umar about it because Ibn Umar did not see it. Like in that hadith that he counts the rak'ahs, he doesn't mention al-Fajr. Right? Because the Prophet ﷺ would pray that at home. And he wouldn't see him doing that. So he will tell us this. He will say, I've memorized or I remember that the Prophet had prayed 8 rak'ahs. 2 before Dhuhr, 2 after Maghrib, and 2 after Isha. And then Hafsa, who is his sister, right, told me about the 2 rak'ahs of Fajr, and I did not see the Prophet praying them. Right? So this is the collection of rak'ahs that Ibn Umar radiyallahu anhu is reporting in addition to what Hafsa has reported. Now Aisha radiyallahu anha, she said also that he would pray before Dhuhr 2, and after 2, after Maghrib 2, after Isha 2, and before Fajr 2. Okay, that gives you 10 rak'ahs. Okay, and you may be wondering, is it only 2 before Dhuhr and 2 after? According to some other ahadith and some other description, the Prophet ﷺ at times he would pray 4 before Dhuhr and 2 after. So that will give you 12. But it's up to you. You can pray the 10 that Ibn Umar and Hafsa report, or you can pray the 12 that other Sahaba also report with 2 extra before Dhuhr in addition to what they mentioned here.
So if you're going to pray maybe 2, let's say you're praying 4 before Dhuhr.
No.
Is the sunnah to combine the 4 or to pray 2 and 2?
Jazakallah khair. So the sunnah and the common practice is 2 and 2. Because the Prophet ﷺ said that Salatul Layli wa Nahar mathna mathna. The prayer of day and night are 2, 2. And 2, 2. But there are some reports, and let me see here in this ahadith, or in this ahadith or another ahadith, that may mention something about praying 4 without any break in them. But then the common practice, according to that hadith, is that whatever you're praying during the day or at night, you break those into 2, 2, 2. Meaning that 2, salam, and then 2. Okay? So that's the more common practice of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, in the what? Yeah. No. Very emphasized sunnah. Yeah.
So, Fajr to the market. So even if you come to masjid with the Ulani Madhab, the Fajr is in progress. If you feel you have enough time to on the side to read 2 rak'ahs quickly, Sunnah, you join the Faraya.
Okay.
And then Zohar, the first 4 will be 4 also market.
No.
2 also market.
Okay.
Asr and market.
No, it's not mu'akkada, yes, and it's not mentioned here, yeah.
And similarly with Isha, you come to 4 rak'ahs their market. Also not if you have changed, fine. If you don't, also not that serious.
Yeah. Okay. So there is some overlap with what is happening here, alhamdulillah, with this marriage mentioned here. Now, so this is the last hadith in this chapter, inshallah. Maybe we will stop here. And afterward, because we go into Salatul Duha. They asked Ali radiallahu anhu about the prayer of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam during the day. Okay? During the day. So this is not the night prayer, this is during the day. قال إنكم لا تطيقون ذلك. He says you cannot handle it. Right? So they asked him, tell us about the salah of the Prophet during the day. He said you cannot handle it. You cannot handle it in what terms? In terms of how the Prophet prayed it. With the khushu', with the concentration, with the dedication, you cannot do what he did. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. So they said, whoever can handle it, he'll handle it. And whoever else, at least he'll know. Right? من أطاق ذلك منا صلى. So he says, إذا كانت الشمس من ها هنا كهيئتها من ها هنا عند العصر صلى ركعتين. Okay, so this is requires a little bit of translation. He says, when the sun is from the east, when it's from the east side, the way that it looks when it is at Asr time, okay, meaning that the sun is just rising, he would pray 2 rak'ahs. Okay, and these 2 rak'ahs that he's talking about here is probably duha. Okay, wallahu a'lam, because he doesn't name it, but it's probably duha. قال وإذ كانت الشمس من ها هنا كهيئتها من ها هنا عند الظهر صلى 4 ويصلي قبل الظهر 4. And he says, if the sun from the east, right, looks like the sun when it is dhuhr time, right? So then from the west, so the sun will be at the west side, but he's talking about it will look like that, but on the east side. He prays 4.
Yes.
He will pray 4. Okay? Now that 4, people have interpretations about it. Does he mean by that 4? It is sunnah, but this is sunnah for zawal. Some ulama say it is sunnah for zawal. Or does he mean by that it is also a time for duha? Right? So the duha extends from the beginning of the sunrise, just a little bit after, all the way till just before dhuhr. So does he mean that you could pray duha then in the beginning and duha at the end? Or does he mean that this is a sunnah that is sunnah for zawal? So some ulama said that is a sunnah for zawal. Then he says, وَيُصَلِّي قَبْلَ الظُّهْرِ 4, and he prays before dhuhr 4 rak'ahs. وَذَكَرَ أَنَّ الرَّسُولَ كَانَ يُصَلِّيهَا عِنْدَ الزَّوَالِ وَيُمُدُّ فِيهَا. And he said that the Prophet ﷺ would pray that, pray dhuhr and would extend it. Then after that he would pray 2 rak'ahs. After dhuhr he would pray 2 rak'ahs. And before asr he would pray 4 rak'ahs. يَفْصِلُ بَيْنَ كُلِّ رَكْعَتَيْنِ. He would separate between 2 rak'ahs by taslim, by salam, upon the angels and the prophets and those who follow them of the believers and the Muslimin. So here is a description of the salah of the Prophet ﷺ during the day. So in the beginning of the day, meaning after Fajr, and then the sun rises, there was salah. And that's probably a person can pray. You can either say that this is Salatul Ishraq, if it is the beginning of the day, or it's possibly to be Salatul Duha. It's either this or that. And then towards the end of that time, close to Dhuhr time, but it's not Dhuhr yet, there is time for Salah. And that is the best time for praying Salatul Duha. That is the best time. We will see. There's a chapter about Salatul Duha, but not for today, inshallah. That's the best time to pray Salatul Duha. So you pray Duha, and then you would have to stop and not pray anything. Right? When the sun is at its highest. Then when it's time for Dhuhr, then you have Sunnatul Dhuhr. And Sunnatul Dhuhr here, as he mentions, radiyallahu anhu, he prayed 4, and then Dhuhr, and then 2 after. And then he mentioned here, unlike the previous Sahaba, before Asr, the Prophet ﷺ would pray 4 rak'ahs. But these, as the brother have said, these were not continuous rak'ahs. Sometimes he would pray them, sometimes he wouldn't. They are not like the rak'ahs before and after Dhuhr, after Maghrib and after Isha, but they are there. And the Prophet ﷺ says, رَحِمَ اللَّهُ مِرِئًا صَلَّى قَبْلَ الْعَصْرِ 4. May Allah be merciful with someone who prays before Asr 4 rak'ahs. And he says here, answering your question, brother, يَفْصِلُ بَيْنَ كُلِّ رَكْعَتَيْنِ. He's separating each 2 rak'ahs with salam. So he prays 2, and then salam, and then pray the other 2. So this is normally the prayer of day and night. By the will of Allah. The next chapter, inshallah, is about Salatul Duha, but we'll leave that, inshallah, till next week, inshallah. And we'll see, inshallah, if you have any questions before we conclude. Yeah. Can you make istighfar while you are in sajda? Of course, you can. After you're saying Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, the room is open there for asking Allah for forgiveness or saying any dua that you want, inshallah. Yeah. Alhamdulillah, you can say tasbih, tahmeed, la ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, or any type of dua that you want to say. That is the time for it, inshallah. That's the position for it. Yeah.
Ishraq. The performance of Ishraq and also the benefits. Again, from understand, Ishraq maybe just 10 minutes after sunrise. And you said the reward, the first 2 rakats is the reward for Umrah, and the second 2 rakats, you read the Allah for the rest of the day. Any comments on that?
Oh, so the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that I remember is that when he said that if you pray Fajr and you stay in your musalla and you stay remembering Allah Azza wa Jal till sunrise, and it is permitted for you, when the time it's permitted for you to pray and you pray 2 rak'ahs, it will be like the reward of a hajjah and umrah tamma, like a complete hajj and umrah for you. So that's short time that you spend in salah and in remembering Allah Azza wa Jal, beginning with Fajr salah and ending with Salatul Ishraq, will be counted as if you performed hajj and umrah complete. So that's the reward. Yes. It's just 2. What is mentioned in that hadith is just 2 rak'ahs. Yeah, salla rak'atayn. So there's no mention of extra 2 that you get to pray and then that they will have something extra to that. No mention of it. Yeah.
You mentioned when the Prophet was praying.
No.
And he comes across a rahmah or an ayah about punishment. Who will make dua?
No.
So that means he was interrupting the reading to make a dua.
No.
And there are some narrations, I don't know where they come from, whereby they said in the Quran, when you pray and you're reading the Quran, you don't interrupt to make dua. For example, Surah Al-Ghashiyah.
No.
At the end of it, some people say, Allahu ahsanna hisaban yasira.
No.
And then others say it is bid'ah. You can't say anything. So how do you reconcile the two?
Okay, inshallah. So if we believe that there is only one phrase that we're supposed to say at after this ayah or that ayah, and we only adhere to it and feel that it's like an obligation, that may qualify as a bid'ah, right? Something that we're adding to the religion. But here the Prophet ﷺ is simply reacting to it, reacting to the ayah. And the fact that he was doing it ﷺ tells us that it is allowed, absolutely allowed. So if you're praying, especially in Sunnah, especially at night, if you pass by an ayah of Rahman and Adab, you can actually stop and ask Allah Azza wa Jal in dua to save you from this or grant you that. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with it, inshallah. That is Sunnah, not even a bid'ah, it's a Sunnah, inshallah. Yeah. But if we believe that, whenever you come to Surah At-Teen, you say Bala wa ana ala dhalika min ash-shahideen, or something like that, and you have to say that phrase every time you read it, then that becomes an issue, right? But if you're reading it at night and you say, yes, I'm a witness, Ya Allah, you're fine, inshallah. Yeah.
The dua you make during the sajda can be in any language, your language, in mother tongue?
It's a common question that, when you are in sujood, can you make dua in your own tongue and not only in Arabic? There's a difference of opinion about it. And the accurate opinion, wallahu a'lam, is that yes, you can make dua in your own tongue, because there is no evidence to prohibit dua in other than Arabic. There is no evidence that says dua has to only be in Arabic and no other language. The adhkar of the salah has to be in Arabic. Okay? Especially if you can say them in Arabic, you can learn them, they have to be in Arabic. But beyond that, there's no evidence to say that when you're making dua, it has to be in Arabic and only in Arabic. If you are not sick, but maybe new to praying the night prayer, and you sit to read the Quran and pray sitting. And that's fine, inshallah. If you are if you're not sick and new to praying the night prayer, could you sit to read the Quran and pray sitting down? Of course you can do that. Now the thing is here to keep in mind, inshallah, is that if you're healthy and you sit down, you're not going to have as much reward as somebody who is standing. If you're healthy. If you're sick, you have an exemption. But if you are healthy and you choose to sit down, alhamdulillah, you still are rewarded, by the way. This should not detract you from your salah. If you say, that's the only way I'm going to be praying if I'm sitting down, please, by all means, pray sitting down and don't leave that salah. It's just, note that it is better and higher to stand up. But you still are rewarded, inshallah, for it. Can you pray 2 rak'ahs after dhuhr? After dhuhr? Is it bid'ah for doing it? Also, how rak'at are in duha most authentic? So about the duha prayer, inshallah, we'll be addressing this next week, inshallah. So I don't need to answer this yet. But can you pray 2 rak'ahs after dhuhr?
I think it was before Zawal.
I don't know. I'm just reading. Can you pray 2 rak'ahs after dhuhr? Is it bid'ah for you doing it? If I'm understanding the question right, it's sunnah to pray 2 rak'ahs after dhuhr. if I'm understanding the question right. So it's not bid'ah at all. So it's from the sunnah to pray 2 before and 2 after, or 4 before and 2 after. So there's nothing more bid'ah in it. But if I did not understand the question, inshallah, just let me know.
Maybe she meant
Asr? It says Dhuhr. Duha?
it's Dhuhr.
Dhuhr, it is Dhuhr. Yeah, so it's 2 rak'ahs after Dhuhr. So I mean, no, it's sunnah to pray 2 rak'ahs after Dhuhr, inshallah. But Duha, inshallah, we'll talk about this, inshallah, after, or next week, inshallah. After Asr, you're not supposed to pray anything, right? After Asr, but not after Dhuhr. Yeah. Naam.
Some of the dua coming from the Quran.
Naam.
Can we take from the Quran and read the one we are in the sujood position?
Naam, jazakallah khair. That's also a common question. Can we take dua from the Quran and read it and put it in our sujood? And the question arises because the Prophet ﷺ told us not to read the Quran in our ruku' and in our sujood. Because the Quran is supposed to be honored, and ruku' and sujood is a position where you are humbling yourself before Allah Azza wa Jal, so this is not a position for the Quran to be recited. But the person who is actually reading that dua does not intend to read the Quran, but intends the dua itself. Right? So he's not intending to recite the Quran, but he wants the dua. And because it is dua, it's allowed. Because it's dua, it is allowed. رَبَّنَا آتِنَا فِي الدُّنْيَا حَسَنَةً وَفِي الْآخِرَةِ حَسَنَةً وَقِنَا عَذَابَ النَّارِ. Something like that. It is allowed that you would do it, inshallah, in your sujood. And by the way, that's of the best dua because it's mentioned in the Quran. So it's a good idea to memorize it and put it in your sujood. And in your dua in general, because it's in the Quran. Yeah.
You said during the night prayers, the ruku' and the sajda would be a little bit more elongated, right?
Na'am.
So in the ruku', would he keep repeating Subhana Rabbil Alim or?
Na'am, in ruku'. So when the ruku' is long, you would keep repeating Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim, Subhana Rabbiyal Azim wa bihamdih, and other adhkar of ruku'. So you would fill that ruku' with that dhikr and other types of adhkar as well, until you feel that you have spent, enough time in ruku', and then you move on, and you stand up, and then you say, Rabbil hamd, mila as-samawati wa mila al-ardi. And there are different types of adhkar that you can also put in that time. So there's enough of them, inshallah, and then repeating these, that you would be able to fill that time. And that just tells you, bi'idhnillah, about how balanced the salah actually should be. If the recitation is long, you should also make the ruku' a little bit longer and the sujood a little bit longer, proportional to your recitation. It doesn't have to be exactly as long, but in proportion to. So when you extend this, extend that as well. Yeah.
Is there any of the salat is ishraq?
Any of the salah?
The name is ishraq?
This is what we call it. This is what we call it. So when they note that hadith of the Prophet ﷺ that when you sit in remembering Allah till sunrise and you pray 2 rak'ahs, they say, what are these 2 rak'ahs? Are they rak'ahs of duha? Or are they rak'ahs specifically to that type of ibadah? Meaning they conclude that ibadah. So because of this, they said this is Salatul Ishraq. Why do they call it Salatul Ishraq and not necessarily duha? Because they say the best time for duha, though it begins then, but the time for duha, or the best time for it is not then. The best time for it when it gets hot, closer to dhuhr time. So you say if you keep praying duha at that moment, you probably are missing the best time for duha. So say maybe that is a different salah than salatul duha. But Allahu a'lam. Allahu a'lam. This is only what conclusions from the ulama.
There is no salat name?
No. There is no salah name from the Prophet ﷺ that it's called Salatul Ishraq.
2 rakat nafil after the sunrise.
Yes.
So 2 rakat nafil we just pray.
Yes.
They have no name.
No, it's not name, but just to distinguish it. What is it? Right? It's a salah that is prayed after sunrise. So this is what it means. Salatul Ishraq. I mean, they just call it to distinguish it. This is a salah that is prayed after sunrise. This is
But also, the Salatul Ishraq, no worldly contact between that and
Na'am.
you get the full blessing.
Na'am.
You will always have a Quran reading, whatever, until the sun is above, and then you can meet the 2 rakats.
Exactly. There's no worldly preoccupation between the time of your salah, the Fajr prayer, till the time of salah.
The Zohar was later, but this time we might have gone about it.
Exactly, exactly. You know, the duha, it is interrupted by your only, daily work and whatever, and then you come close to dhuhr and you pray it. Yeah. Jazakumullah.
Maybe mixing the word ishraq. I think it's something named like salla. Ishraq means it's just sunrise.
Right, exactly.
No, but the shuruq is the sunrise is starting about 10 minutes after the
Naam, naam. Naam, I mean, the name is not an issue. The aim is just to identify what we're talking about. So it's not an issue, We can just play 2 rak'ahs at the end of, that ibadah. It's not an issue. Yeah.
I find the word Islam because it's a hadith. It says, always say, pray the Fajr until the sun rises and you pray Kanama Mega Umrah.
No. That's what it is.
Yeah.
That's in reference to this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's reference to it.
Islamic discussion after the Fajr.
Nah.
Like someone having an Islamic discussion between the Fajr and the sunrise. Is it allowed?
To have an Islamic discussion?
Yeah.
Like a sort of studying?
Like even like someone read a halaqah or anything mentioned.
Maybe, wallahu alam. So the question,
Someone give you salam or ask you something, you cannot answer.
No, inshallah. I mean, it's not that rigid. It's not like your focus is on the ibadah of Allah Azza wa Jal, right? But if somebody comes and he needs your help or gives you salam, give him salam. He asks you something, reply and give him whatever he needs to, but then go back to your intention is ibadah. But it's not that you have to isolate yourself completely from people. No. If somebody, and again, know that the Prophet ﷺ ibadah, as you've seen, is very flexible. Sometimes, if somebody needs your help and you help him, it might be actually better than that ibadah that you're doing in the masjid. So be flexible, inshallah, with it. No need for it. Yeah, inshallah. Okay, inshallah. When we conclude, Jazakumullahu khairan. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Astaghfiruka.